Not everyone will like this. Some people are going to feel called out. Some people are going to feel uncomfortable. And some people are going to call this arrogance, detachment, or emotional avoidance. That reaction is expected, because if you truly believe that life is mostly about luck, if you think outcomes are random, if you feel safer believing that people simply end up where they end up, then what I'm about to say will sound threatening. But if you've ever watched someone walk away just in time, if you've ever seen a person leave before things fell apart, if you've ever wondered why certain people seem to avoid the worst endings, then listen carefully. There's a label people love to give Aquarius. Lucky. They say Aquarius always lands on their feet. They say things somehow work out for them. They say they dodge disasters that hit everyone else. From the outside, it looks convincing. Relationships end before they turn ugly. Jobs are left before burnout becomes collapse. Friendships fade before betrayal turns public. Paths are abandoned before they become traps. And when the dust settles, Aquarius is already gone. So people look back and say, wow, they were lucky. But here's the part that makes the conversation uncomfortable. Ask an Aquarius, and they won't agree. They won't smile and accept the compliment. They won't say thank you. They'll tell you something far less flattering. I wasn't lucky. I just didn't stay. That's where the argument begins. Because to most people, staying feels brave. Staying feels loyal. Staying feels like proof that you cared. Leaving early feels suspicious. Leaving without a dramatic reason feels cold. Leaving before things explode feels like cowardice. So when Aquarius leaves and avoids the damage, people don't want to believe it was a choice. They want to believe it was chance. Because if it was a choice, then the question becomes personal. What did they see that everyone else ignored? Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Luck is often the name we give to decisions we didn't have the courage to make. Aquarius doesn't operate the way most people do. They don't live moment to moment. They don't measure situations by intensity. They don't chase emotional peaks and hope the landing will be soft. They scan structures. They pay attention to patterns long before they turn into problems. While others are asking, does this feel good right now? Aquarius is quietly asking, what does this become if I stay? They notice inconsistencies early. They notice when words stop matching behavior. When excitement masks instability. When a situation only works if no one asks hard questions. And the moment they sense that something is built on tension instead of truth, they begin to detach. Not dramatically, not emotionally, logically. This is where people get it wrong. They assume Aquarius doesn't feel deeply. They assume detachment means indifference. They assume walking away early means nothing mattered. That assumption couldn't be more false. Aquarius feels deeply. They just don't confuse feeling with obligation. They understand something most people learn too late. Every environment extracts a cost. Every relationship has a hidden price. Every system demands payment eventually. Most people don't ask what the price is until the bill arrives. Aquarius asks up front. And if the cost doesn't make sense, they don't negotiate with their future self. They leave. This is the moment people miss. Because when Aquarius leaves, nothing has exploded yet. There's no scandal, no betrayal, no undeniable proof that something was wrong. Just a quiet exit. And quiet exits are easy to misjudge. People call it overthinking. They call it fear. They call it emotional distance. They say things like, you're giving up too soon. You didn't even try hard enough. You could have made it work. What they don't realize is that Aquarius already tried, internally. They ran the scenario forward. They followed the pattern to its logical conclusion. They watched the trajectory, not the moment. And once that internal calculation finishes, there is no going back. Because Aquarius doesn't leave to teach lessons. They leave to avoid damage. This is why they rarely explain themselves. How do you explain a future that hasn't happened yet? How do you prove a collapse that hasn't begun? Most people don't want warnings. They want confirmation. So Aquarius stops trying to convince anyone. They simply remove themselves from the equation. Months later, sometimes years later, when things finally fall apart, people look back and say, how did they know? They didn't know. They just refused to ignore what was already visible. This is where the idea of luck becomes seductive. Calling Aquarius lucky allows people to avoid a harsher truth. That the warning signs were there. That the discomfort showed up early. That the misalignment was felt long before it was admitted. Luck becomes a shield. It protects the ego from accountability. Because if Aquarius avoided the same outcome by making a different choice sooner, then maybe the disaster wasn't inevitable. And that thought is far more unsettling than believing in chance. Here's the turning point most people miss. Aquarius doesn't avoid pain. They avoid prolonged damage. They don't mind discomfort. They don't run from difficulty. They run from inevitability. Once something becomes structurally unsustainable, they stop investing. This makes them look cold, especially in a culture that glorifies endurance. We praise people who stay too long. We romanticize suffering. We admire those who gave it everything, even when everything was misplaced. Aquarius doesn't want admiration. They want coherence. They don't want a dramatic story if the ending costs them their sanity. So they miss certain things. They miss emotional roller coasters. They miss intense highs followed by devastating lows. They miss experiences that feel alive but unstable. And yes, sometimes that means they miss moments that others cherish. But what they gain is something far less visible. They gain clarity. And clarity doesn't feel exciting in the moment. Clarity feels boring. It feels flat. It feels like nothing is happening. Until you look around and realize nothing is collapsing either. This is the mini-climax most people resist. Aquarius isn't protected by luck. They are protected by restraint. They don't stay in situations just because everyone else is staying. They don't follow momentum blindly. They don't confuse popularity with safety. They don't mistake intensity for truth. That alone filters out an enormous amount of future suffering. Think about how many disasters start with, "It didn't seem that bad at first." Aquarius hears that sentence and immediately thinks, that's exactly how it begins. So they step away. Not loudly, not heroically, quietly. And because the exit isn't dramatic, it's easy to underestimate until the consequences arrive. This is why people accuse Aquarius of being detached. Because attachment, to most people, means staying no matter what. To Aquarius, attachment means alignment. If the alignment breaks, the attachment dissolves. Not out of cruelty, out of self-respect. And here's where the argument truly peaks. Most people don't get unlucky. They get attached. They stay in situations that drain them. Because leaving would mean admitting they were wrong. They stay in environments that no longer fit. Because walking away feels like failure. They stay in relationships that are already decaying. Because hope feels safer than honesty. Aquarius doesn't let hope override observation. They don't stay to protect an image. They leave to protect their future. That choice doesn't feel brave in the moment. It feels lonely. It feels isolating. It often means being misunderstood for a long time. And that is the real price Aquarius pays. Not luck, but isolation. They accept being the one who left early. The one who didn't fully explain. The one people talk about later. They accept being judged in the present to avoid being destroyed in the future. Most people can't tolerate that trait. So they stay. And later, when the damage becomes undeniable, they look for reasons. They blame timing. They blame fate. They blame bad luck. Anything except the moment they ignored their own discomfort. This is why the debate never ends. Because there are two completely different ways of living. One believes life is shaped by chance, and meaning comes from enduring whatever happens. The other believes life is shaped by structure, and freedom comes from choosing where you place yourself. Neither side can convince the other. Because if you believe in luck, Aquarius looks privileged. And if you believe in systems, Aquarius looks disciplined. But here is the quiet truth beneath everything. Avoiding catastrophe doesn't require brilliance. It requires restraint. It requires the willingness to leave before you can fully explain why. It requires trusting a pattern before it turns into proof. And that kind of trust is rare. Not because people can't see the signs, but because they don't want to act on them. So when you see Aquarius step away, when you see them intact while others are rebuilding, when you see them calm where others are exhausted, you can call it luck. But understand what that word is really doing. It's protecting you from asking harder questions about your own choices. Because if it wasn't luck, then maybe it was clarity. And clarity changes responsibility. Some people live by chance. Some people live by courage. And some people live by clarity. Aquarius lives by clarity. And clarity doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't beg to be understood. It simply moves away from what will eventually collapse. There are people who don't need luck. They just don't stand where disaster is guaranteed to land. And once you see that difference, you stop asking why Aquarius seems fortunate, and you start asking something far more uncomfortable. How many things in your life are you still standing in that you already know you should have left? That silence after the question isn't emptiness. It's awareness. And awareness, once it arrives, doesn't let you pretend forever.